Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you own a Fuji X series camera and you aren't regularly upgrading the firmware of the camera, you may be missing out on a number of features that get added to your camera. Now, keeping your firmware up to date is much like updating your phone or your computer. It's just a basic part of maintenance. And if you own the new Fuji X-S10, it's time to upgrade because Fuji today just released firmware version 1.02 for your new camera. Fuji notes that this firmware update 1.02 incorporates the following fixes. In cases that auto is selected on the mode dial or auto is selected in the minimum shutter speed or of the ISO settings, the shutter speed setting is changed to avoid a blur image caused by a handshake. The electronic level can now be used when auto is selected by the mode dial. And finally, a fix of a minor bug. Now, Fuji is always a bit vague on what these bug fixes actually do in firmware updates. So if you have an X-S10 and you do this update, and notice any improvements or any kind of new features, be sure to come back and let me know in the comments. Sometimes they can add and improve some things dramatically in the camera with these firmware updates. I'll leave a link to the firmware update down in the description below, but before you download the firmware, you want to make sure that your, number one, your camera battery is fully charged. Just like other electronic devices, when you're doing these firmware updates, if your battery dies and the camera shuts off during a firmware update, the camera may no longer operate correctly and sometimes actually has to be sent back to the manufacturer. So you want to have a full battery. In addition to the battery, you do want to have a SD card. Ideally, you'll have a separate one to do your firmware updates, and ideally this will be formatted in the camera before loading the firmware update. I find that works the best. Just make sure if you're using the same camera that you're taking pictures with on the SD card that you back up your pictures before formatting your card to do the firmware update. Now, once you've downloaded the brand new firmware update for the X-S10, simply insert the card into the camera. You'll want to turn the camera on by pressing the display back button. This is the same for all Fuji X series cameras when you're doing the firmware update. The camera will prompt you if you want to update either the camera or the lens. Obviously, we're updating the camera. Select the camera, click OK to confirm, and the update will begin automatically. Now, when the camera firmware is updated, you'll be prompted to turn off the camera, and your X-S10 is now fully up to date with the brand new firmware. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing and also turning on the bell notification. You'll get notified of new videos. I post Fuji X series videos on this channel quite regularly. If you have any questions about your Fuji X series camera, you can also leave me a comment down below as well. I like to answer your questions and can sometimes even answer them in an upcoming video. But until my next video, you can check out this one.